Let's shift gears and discuss a different but I guess equally important issue faced by event professionals. And this story was shared anonymously about a situation that many of us, I feel like, can relate to it. So I'm going to go over this story. At an event, a coworker was sitting at the registration table talking to another team member. A customer walked by and joked about him joining the events team. The coworker replied, "Yeah, I've been demoted." While it wasn't directly tied to the event, I was so angry that he said that in front of our team and to a customer as if event work was beneath him. Following the event, he was spoken to by the director and apologized. That's the story. This incident really struck a chord with the person that submitted it and motivated them to double down on the work they do internally and externally to show that events are a strategic part of the organization and not just an afterthought. So let's unpack this. I'm trying to honestly understand more the offense behind this. And I do understand the concept of do not make comments that could, make the company look bad in front of a customer. Like none of that should be discussed in front of a client, in front of a customer. But in your opinion, how should this situation have been handled better, I guess?
For sure. I think, look, running huge programs a lot of times requires everyone stepping in, right? So I was just at Infocom, Avixa's big annual conference last week, and I noticed someone working registration had a name badge that said accounting. So they're not on the events team, they're working registration. That is very common. It is when it comes to your annual meeting or your big user conference, whatever it is, it's all hands on deck. People from accounting are there, other parts. Like when I was working for one specific association, we had people from the journal who were running speaker ready room, who were writers. They had nothing to do with the events team. So I understand feeling slighted by the comment, but
Mm-hmm.
also like sometimes you just got to let that stuff roll off your back. Now, maybe there's more context to this that this one particular employee slights events and the event team on a regular basis. And maybe this was the
Mm,
straw that broke the camel's back.
right.
But I think what I took away from this is how amazing is their leadership that they sort of doubled down after they heard this employee say that to put a more emphasis internally about how critical the events are to the success of it. And I don't know if this was a salesperson or
Or
marketing
a
person.
marketing, right?
Yeah, like who knows like what department they come from, but I
Yeah.
think having that education and showing them like when they're on site, they see the planners running every which way, all over, they never really see them or they see them all the time running. And so I think just having that education about how critical the role is that we're not party planners, it's the age-old thing. We're not party planners. We don't just order menus. We don't just put chairs in a room. There's a whole strategy side to it. And if it's a salesperson, even more embarrassing
Right.
for them because like events are so critical to the success of sales. And so for
Yeah.
them to say that, like, I got demoted, like, man, gut punch.
So it feels like in this situation, whoever this person, whatever their position was, they were from the get-go looking at events as some kind of a either waste of time or
Hmm.
something that is not worth investing time, money, resources into. And I think that's where the main problem came from because there's definitely a lot of strategy. There's definitely a lot of work that goes behind planning an event. And sometimes a lot of people from the outside, they just see the fluff. They just say, oh, you constantly go to fun events, you constantly have fun, you're always going to something that seems like you're traveling to great destinations, you're seeing great places, you're always drinking, or like that's not really all that it's about. Behind the scenes, there's this crazy amount of talented experts and people
Yeah.
that make those wheels run. Without them, you wouldn't have an event that seems effortless, an event that seems like everybody's having fun, everybody's having this amazing experience. And I think that's where, some of this offense was taken, because it's like, you have no idea how hard we have
Yeah.
worked for this to actually happen. And I remember was on LinkedIn, there's something about, I don't know if it was Julius or somebody else that was posting about how in so many ways event professionals and event planners, they have to sell themselves better,
Yeah.
especially in front of their CEOs and stakeholders, so they can really bring value to the work that they do. So then there's no question about why should we put resources and money and people behind this event. And that all goes back to ROI, but at the same time it goes back to how do you sell yourself and your skill set and your talent. Because if you don't, and then your CEO thinks that your admin can do the same job that you're doing, that's not good for anyone, because we know that it takes a specific skill set, but it also takes experience to be able to put on events that matter, events that leave an impact, and also, bring an ROI.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's been my soapbox since coming out of COVID that COVID put planners at the table. You finally got a seat at the table. And then you showed up to the table talking about how many registrants you had and how you were going to do XYZ logistical thing, as opposed to, if we do this, it will move the sales needle. If we do this, it's going to increase our marketing. To your point, it's all driven back to objectives. And if you can't show why it is that you're doing what you're doing and how it helps the company, then your admin can order menus. Your admin can count how many registrants there are. It's like, what are you doing to convert?
Yeah, absolutely. So how can then event professionals effectively communicate the impact of their work to other departments and the type of ROI? And to me, my first thought to answering this is data, analytics. There has to be data. There has to be a way where you track and you can showcase what that looks like. What about you? What do you think about that?
No, I definitely think that's part of it. I think this particular person too, like, yeah, I've been demoted comment. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, really truly demote them then, because running registration, like, you're the
Right.
first person that attendee sees, like, of
Mm-hmm.
any role to be demoted to. That's a pretty big role to be demoted to. And so I would be like, okay, if you really want demotion, I'll go have you be a room checker where you don't get to see or speak to anyone, and I'll just put baby in the corner where you get to do nothing. Or in the future, you don't even get to come to the event. So you don't
Yeah.
get to travel, you don't get to experience it, you get to do nothing. Like, I
Yeah.
would threaten people with bad hotel rooms all the time when I was a planner. Be like, "Oh, you're pissing me off or you're making it too hard or whatever." I'll be like, "You get the furthest hotel room for the furthest way, or your meeting rooms are the one all the way down the hallway, down another hallway." Like, obviously if they're in like accounting or something, you can't do that, but I think
Right,
there's
because then
ways.
your funds will never come to you.
Right. Of course. But I think there's just also not just educating up, but educating across. Because so
Yeah.
many people that, to your point, like, they just don't know all the things
Mm-hmm.
that go in behind the scenes. Like, Cvent Connect last week had a drone show. Do we think that their head planner just woke up one day and was like, "Oh, I think we should have a drone show at the event," and then learned how to fly drones? Like, there's probably months and months and permits and teams
Yeah,
and rehearsals and all of that went into a 5-minute drone show or a thirty
exactly.
second drone show. And I think it's just, again, part of putting everything out from behind the curtain. Planners don't want people to know what they're doing because then they know when something didn't go right or wrong. And I think sometimes you have to bring staff along the journey, because if they're not walking in your shoes and they're not feeling your pain, they're not really going to get it. And so, like, across laterally with your colleagues, you have to educate them, but in a different way from how you're necessarily educating, executives on your ROI.
I definitely agree with that. And I think there's also the benefit, or the need, you as a planner, to, if you feel undervalued, because it feels like that came a little bit defensive in the sense that they felt undervalued. They felt like they put a lot of work in and it wasn't valued as it should have been. It is, in a way, it should be your responsibility to provide value and to feel confident, and literally to, I would have come right back at that.
Same. Same.
I mean, we're kind of like feisty personalities, right? But I mean, like, I know the value that I bring to this organization, to this event. I know how hard my little ass has worked on this. And I'm not going to allow anyone to just like tarnish it by their little comment because they don't understand the value that this event has, or this particular role has for the event itself. Like you said, like, if I'm coming to your event and the first person that I meet at registration table is grumpy, how is that gonna change the energy and what I feel about your event?
Yep. I feel the same way about hotels right now. Hotels are cutting back on valet and luggage and all of these front desk duties when that's where they need to be investing, because that's the first person I see. If I see some contracted sitting on their phone valet outside of your hotel and that's the first interaction I have, my perception, it might be 5-star autograph collection, I don't care. If your valet or doorman is not greeting me at the level of service that I would expect, the rest of the trip now has that layer of cloud over the
Yeah.
entire thing. And I feel registration is the same. Like, that's the first interaction someone has with you. As soon as they get to that venue, I mean, there's many, many touch points before they get to the venue, but like that human to human contact, registration is that first touch point. So actually, like, the fact that this person got put at registration should be an honor. Because if not, like I said, I'll truly demote you and put you in a back room running something where you don't interact with anybody and you sit behind a desk doing nothing all day.
Yeah, exactly. We have all these boxes that need to be filled with swag. How about you do that job next time?
Yep, exactly. Go unpack all the boxes in the staff room. Oh no, you're setting up all the computers for the staff.
Right.
I will put you in a room away from everyone else where working at registration should be an honorable position in my eyes.
Well, anything else we want to add to this story? I feel like we covered most of, what we thought I should be said about it.
No, I think we covered. I think there's a lot more to that story on the planner and the person making
Right.
the joke side. But I think it really just comes down to education, educating across your organization and educating up on the ROI that events bring and the value you bring as a planner.
All right. Well, I feel like we did a good job. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifanevents.com. All right, our last story for today, it was brought to us by Bridget, an award-winning event producer and founder of Creative Canvas Productions, and she was okay with us sharing that on the air. And here's what happened at their last, I guess, Ignite Charlotte live streaming event. Our last Ignite Charlotte live streaming event was going extremely well up until the power on the left side of the venue went out. We had equipment plugged in on both sides of the venue, obviously, but our main switcher and two show computers were blown out as a result of the electrical power surge. We had surge protectors, but that didn't save us, and there wasn't a way to restore the power or move all the equipment over to the few remaining outlets on the other side. We engaged with our online audience and moved them into multiple 5-minute Zoom breakout sessions while they adjusted to our plan C. So by now they're into plan C,
Oh,
right?
wow.
I can only imagine the stress this is like going
Like I'm
on,
sweating reading this.
right?
This is so much.
A few people dropped off, but several stayed and cheered us on through the challenge. Oh gosh, those technical challenges, right? We checked
Mhm.
in with our A speakers and told them our plan, used the one remaining laptop as our all-in-one switching station. Oh my goodness. While another laptop connected to the confidence monitor and would show their time slides. Some speakers really struggled to rebound from the challenge that we were having, but the majority of the speakers delivered their 5-minute talk using 15-minute advancing slides and did an outstanding job. And then her lesson learned from this entire debacle was bring more equipment than you think you need, even if you've done this specific virtual event in the past. You can control electrical surges in an old building with faulty wiring. The venue owner told us about the faulty wiring after the fact and refunded some of our money. All right. So Megan, I know we
Ooh,
both done virtual events, hybrid
yeah.
events, back to virtual and then back to hybrid and in person. What are your thoughts on how Bridget and her team handled the situation? And I have some thoughts myself too.
I mean, impressive recovery that she was on plan C and not D, E, F, or Z, because my Lord. I think this is sort of a tangent, but like this is why COVID was so hard for meeting planners because we're
Mm-hmm.
all control freaks. And when it's in person, if I need extra chairs and the venue's not taking long enough, the unions will kill me for saying this, but I'm just going to go find chairs and put them in a room. If
Right.
I'm running a virtual meeting and the speaker's internet goes down, or one time I had a speaker fall asleep in the middle of a session, I can't physically be there to fix their internet or their mic or wake them up,
Yeah.
like we just can't do those things. So I feel for her. I think the biggest takeaway from this is you knew it was an old building. Like knowing your venue limitations is
Yeah.
half the battle of producing hybrid. Even if it's like new and shiny, I still ask a lot of questions about the back end because if
Yeah.
there aren't enough plugs or the internet's not strong enough, and you know that kind of going into it, you can prepare and bring the extra equipment. If you know the venue's really old and you know they probably haven't upkept on the tech, then I'm bringing even extra and I'm having vendors on standby. Like I might need
Yeah.
another switcher. We might need to bring in power.
Absolutely. I used to work into an old venue, a historical venue back in Portland, Oregon. And to this point, it is a historical building. And there isn't much that you can do with historical buildings. The infrastructure, it is what it is. I mean, it was so outdated that you knew that if you press on this light switch, the elevator would stop, like the service elevator, you stop. So you literally had like this huge sign, do not turn on the switch. So there's a bit of
Hilarious.
tribal knowledge that obviously goes into those buildings.
Right.
And we were the in-house, so we got to do events there a lot. So we kind of learned all the tricks. We knew which, light switch not to touch. We also always brought in additional power. Like literally, we had a generator outside of the venue and pull power through the windows for any event that was a high stake event. Anything that we knew that the venue will not be able to sustain, especially if there's like high loads with a lot of lighting that require a lot of ampage or large projectors. We did projection mapping in there a whole lot, so that required a lot of wattage, and we didn't
Mhm.
have those circuits available to us, right? But again, that goes back to a bit of like tribal knowledge, knowing that this is a old building, knowing that old building by default they do not have the infrastructure, they do not have the circuits that your event might require. So having additional power, I mean, power surges are great, but they're not going to carry your event, especially
Yeah.
in the case where you do not know if that will ever come back, right? So I feel the pain. I have been through, especially during COVID, through those live streams where something goes down on some end and you're trying to troubleshoot the heck out of it. And every minute feels like 100 hours, and your
Yep,
sweat comes down like nobody's business. And your heart rate has gone to 170, and you gotta make it, like literally you're shaking because you're trying to make it work, but
absolutely.
there's so many things out of your control. So to Bridget's team, I feel like they really handle it well. They quickly pivoted and adapted. What strategies would you recommend for maintaining audience engagement during such disruptions? Because that's another thing, right? It's like anything that feels like a minute here for an online audience, you're going to lose them. They're not going to be there forever. They're not going to wait there for 50 minutes until you get back online.
I think this is where the biggest contingency plan comes into me, because if it wasn't the power, it could have been something else. It could have been a speaker who didn't show up. Like there's always
Yeah.
going to be something that happens. You can't prepare for everything, nor could she have prepared that half the building was not going to come back on after a power surge. So I think having contingency plans for content is equally as important as logistical contingency plans. That maybe there's a pre-recorded video that your tech team could easily just throw up there,
Mm-hmm.
or we're going to replay a talk that was from last year that was the most rated. Like there's a ton, like every organization has a ton of canned stuff, whether it's commercials or short videos or long form talks. I think you could just stack the deck and have a folder of videos ready to go. And also like be transparent with your audience, right? So like obviously they were going through something. Like we don't always have to like cover it up, like the building's on fire and I'm trying to throw a sheet over it so no one knows it's on fire. Like that's
Right.
ridiculous. Instead, just be like, we know the building's on fire. It's totally fine. We're handling it. Security's on
I
top
mean,
of
maybe
it.
get the people out if they're in the
Well,
building.
of course, right? Like we're getting everyone out of the building. Everyone knows like we're having a technical difficulty. Like I think people give you a lot more grace when you're transparent about it. Like half the power is out in this building, so we are going to take a quick break. Here's some additional new content for you to watch, while we're getting back online, kind of a thing, as opposed to saying nothing or doing nothing and leaving people in the dark. Then I'm definitely going to leave, because I'm like, amateur hour. What are you guys even doing? As opposed to saying,
Yeah.
shit's going down at the venue. We are going to need a minute. Here's some entertainment in the process.
Definitely a good strategy there. Something that we've learned over COVID after doing so many of those live streams, broadcasts, virtual events, digital events, whatever you want to call it. At this point, I don't even know how many names we named the same thing. We've learned the importance of having a remote team that is
Mhm.
not plugged into your main wiring, into your main internet, that can pick up the lift or can even run things remotely, so that you're not just relying, especially if you're in this old venue and you know that there could be some problems. One, not just power, but also internet, the infrastructure. I'm surprised that they had internet in the first place, right? Most of
Agreed.
those venues, they would struggle with that first and foremost. Maybe they had a backup and there was never an issue. But if you know that this is going to potentially be a problem, if you've already made your ABCD contingency plans, I think having a remote team be part of this contingency plan is very important. And we have set those things in place. Like many times when I produce events and I live stream events, I might be here in the office carrying one part of the stream, but I have a backup in a completely different remote office
Mhm.
that carries the stream just as well. So if something happens, to my internet, to my power, there's always someone that can pick it up, right? So
Yep.
I've done events this way from hotel rooms, and I am at the mercy of the bandwidth that they give me, even though they say, oh, it's fantastic, you pay for the upgraded version. Let me tell you, it's not always the case. So I had
Yep.
to rely on my remote team. It's like, hey, pick up the stream because I'm dealing with things, or I would have them be ready with that can content or whatever it is, or engage with the audience, be in the chat, assure them that will back, or be in the in the waiting room with the speakers, because the speakers are also if those speakers had 5-minute talks and you're dealing with a 15-minute situation, you had to skip 3 speakers at this point, right? It's like
Yep.
you're gonna have to figure out how do you make sure those people still get their content out, or maybe they have to send pre-recorded content post event, or you're gonna have to extend your event. Like something's gonna have to happen, right? And playing through those scenarios through technical rehearsals where you're able to move between teams, A team, B team, that is very important. And it's something that, again, you learn by doing, and you learn because you might have been in the situation, this type of
For
situation
sure.
before, even though it might not have been the power going down, but who knows what else went down, right? Like a mouse ate your Cat 5, and now you're like, my internet went down and I have no idea why.
Right. It could be anything, and I
Yes.
think the biggest takeaway is like thinking about having remote backup, someone who's not at the venue who can pick up, and then also not just having logistical contingency, but content contingencies. It's the value of having a host who can go up there and tap dance and, you know,
Yep.
do the
Yep.
shiny thing over here so we
Do a
don't see what's
magic
happening over
show,
there.
something.
Right. Or like replaying old content from another event or a past webinar or anything. We all have it. It's just when you don't have to scramble for those contingency plans, it looks like it maybe was a happy accident as opposed to, oh no, they're doing this on purpose because something's going on.
Yeah, and then to her point of, the importance of bringing more equipment than you think you need, I absolutely agree with that. I've been at events where I've actually traveled to events and I had to bring a crew in, and we're bringing trucks, and you always have extras because you never know. There's always one extra breakout that's being thrown in your lap. There's always one extra laptop that's needed at the podium. There's always 1, 3, 4 more microphones than they thought they needed. There's always equipment that needs to be added to your original scope of order. And there's 2 options: one, you either have it; two, you rent it from the in-house, which many times happens to be very, 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 very expensive because we know who we're dealing in some of those in-houses. Or
Yep.
three, you are prepared. And let me tell you, nothing saves the day more than when you are the hero, when you can say, no problem, we've got you, right? Because event
Yep.
planners, when they're hit with those changes, they feel embarrassed themselves that they have to change the order. Like many times I'd be like, they would apologize a million times over because like the client, or I don't know, the CEO just added this extra TV or panel, or I don't know whatever it was that was definitely not part of the initial plan, right? Obviously
Yep.
there's a good process to know how to ask the right questions, especially from the AV production point of view, to be able to drill through all the scenarios, to all the changes that might happen. But last minute changes, they're inevitable. So yes, bringing more equipment is obviously very, very important. Having backup plans, running through those tests through technical rehearsals to make sure that those backup plans are implemented in a timely fashion, having DMC if you're doing a virtual event or a live stream,
Hmm.
having content that you can easily pull on to be able to play almost like a commercial break.
Yep.
What else am I? And then dealing with, let's talk about the venue itself. Like sometimes you get into a venue and, like she said, it sounded like they were hiding the fact that they've got faulty wiring.
A little
Like,
bit. I think that's why she got some of her money back or refunded all of her money.
yeah, so it sounds like sometimes you might be walking into a situation and you deal with people that are untrustworthy. They might be hiding things, or they might not tell you that, hey, by the way, at the day of your event, we have this major construction going on right next door. Have you been
Or
in
hey,
those
by the
situations
way, we
before?
booked a cheerleading competition, so
Yes.
there's going to be, 12-year-old cheerleaders running around this hotel the entire time your executive meeting is going
Pumping
on.
loud music because they gotta do their routine, jumping on
Yep.
top of each other and it's just above your ballroom or something, right?
Yep.
Oh
All the
man.
things. But
Yeah,
I will
so
say Bridget did, it sounds like she had great contingency plans. I think given the scenario, I don't know that I would have changed much. I probably would have done the same thing Bridget did. And I'm pretty impressed with what she had to go through and what she was able to pull together to only lose a handful or she said some of the virtual attendees and not all is
Yeah.
pretty impressive. So bravo to Bridget. I think she handled it really well.
Absolutely. So kudos to Bridget. Thank you so much for sharing this story with us. You handle it really, really well. We are proud of you and we appreciate you bringing this scenario to us. And I think with that, this brings us to a wrap.
It's crazy. Flew by.
Flew by. I mean, I was super, engaged with those stories. I feel like you felt the same way.
Yeah, I think it's scenarios that we've all have been through one way or another. Lots of great learning takeaways from each three of these. So thank you guys for submitting. Those were great ways to kick off Event About It.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your insights. All of this have definitely made this content possible
Yeah.
for our first episode. But wait. We've got quite a few more coming down the pipeline. So we want to hear from you. If you do have a challenging or interesting event story that you like to share with us and would like us to dissect it and talk about it in our next episodes, please submit it to us. Your story could really help, like Megan said in the beginning, fellow event professionals learn and grow, and we would love to feature it. And with that, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Also follow our LinkedIn page and Instagram for the latest updates, behind the scenes content and whatnot. And I will make sure to include the submission form in the episode notes so you can easily access it and share your stories. I will say 2 of those podcast episodes will be recorded, but we will have 2 live ones. And during those live episodes, we would love for you to put those on the calendar. Let me look at the dates really quick. I want to make sure that I'm throwing the right dates. It will be July 19 and July 26, and we have those listed on the YouTube page as well as the LinkedIn page. And we're going to stream it live. So some of those stories will come from the chat. Some of those stories will be very much ad hoc, and we're going to have fun with it. So I'm super excited about that. So put that on your calendar. Yep. Make sure that you keep that in mind. I do have to mention, though, the elephant in the room again, talking about technical difficulties.
All day. I can't fix it. I'm going to fix my camera before next time. My God, it's even driving me insane. I got to fix it for the next one.
It's not that we didn't try, but at one point we were like, just screw this. We're just going to run with it. And we're going to apologize at the end.
Yeah. Well, I promise all audience fans that I will get my camera fixed before the next episode.
Well, thank you so much, Megan, for co-hosting this with me. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to record our next one. And for everyone that has been listening, we definitely look forward to hearing more of your amazing stories. And until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in events.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about Treat Fan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.
Over the past 5 years, we've poured our hearts into the Events Demystified podcast, exploring the intersections of audiovisual technology, AI innovations, and the crucial role of mental and physical wellness in event production. We've also shined a light on the talented women working behind the scenes in AV. As we plan to deepen our impact and reach more listeners like you, we need your help to achieve this. Tune in to any Events Demystified episode on Spotify. Hit the follow button on Spotify to keep up with our latest episodes and updates. Review, rate, give us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Share, pass your favorite episode along to 2 friends who love crafting unforgettable events. Win. By following these steps, you'll be entered to win a $50 Amex gift card. Join us, share your voice, and let's demystify event experiences together.